Hey everyone, it's Kai.
And Lafayette, and this is
The Theory of Living. Thanks for tuning in. We're able to bring you this episode thanks to our Patreon members.
Patreon is a subscription-based platform where people can provide support for content creators like us.
Thanks to our Patreon members and supporters, we're able to provide free content on the podcast and weekly episodes.
By being a Patreon member, you'll have access to our entire podcast library, full video and audio episodes, along with much more.
If you like this episode and you feel it adds value to your life,
or you hate it,
please subscribe on Patreon and or leave your review on Apple Podcast.
And don't forget to mention it to your friends over your next beer. Truly, thank you again, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode.
We're back again.
I'd like to give a shout out to our listeners out there. Mm-hmm. All three of you. Very, very appreciative.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we should talk about it, right? I mean, jokingly and seriously, that we have currently how many Patreon members?
2.
Yes, we have 2 Patreon members, guys. Today, as of February 10th.
Yeah, on a Monday.
Monday, 2022. Yeah. I like to look back maybe year after and see how I feel about this. You know, we started with 2 members, and, you know, who knows how many members we're going to have after a year. But
I'm hoping it's going to be at least double that number.
Yeah.
Maybe even triple.
Triple, maybe
what
more.
If we have 6 people?
Yeah. I mean, we honestly, we're not doing this for money. We've said this before, maybe not explicitly, but we don't do this for money. You know, really this podcasting aligns with our personal passion, mm-hmm. which is to explore ideas and, you know, love of philosophy and other subjects in life. But we do need bare minimum to sustain this lifestyle, because we quit our jobs, guys. Nobody asked us to, but we wanted to have that complete autonomy that we appreciate a lot and value highly. But anyway, I just wanted to say that, you know.
It's a good segue because what we're talking about today is self-esteem. And it could be very easy when things and your ideals and your values don't line up with reality to have
That's a great point.
Low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even though despite the current lack of financial success in regards to this or subscribers, we still have high self-esteem.
Yeah, maybe you want to move a little bit because like you're slightly off the center.
Slightly off center.
Yeah, same here.
He just wants me to touch him.
I guess. But,
So.
Yeah, but very good point. I love that. I love that start.
It's important to be able to dissect why you do anything. Right? So if we're going to define self-esteem, I think it's easy to define it as the way we view ourselves in relation to the world. Mm-hmm. So how we view ourselves positively or negatively. Mm-hmm. And again, your self-esteem is multifaceted. Yeah. So you can have self-esteem issues. Maybe it's in regard to your physique, your appearance, your intellect. Numerous, unlimited amounts of way that you can have self-esteem. Yeah. And the reason that we wanted to talk about this one particularly is because we've found on average that most people suffer from low self-esteem where they don't need to. Right. And it's always very easy from the outside, especially when you're close with somebody, to be able to see that this person's purely being held back because they view themselves in a way that's not beneficial or useful for them. Yeah. And we just typically call that low self-esteem. Right. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but again, you're probably missing out on some joys in life and realizing your capability and your potential. And this might be just come from having the wrong values or realizing that you only have so much energy in the day and maybe you're putting energy into the wrong areas. Yeah. And so you're expecting too much of yourself, of what you're capable of. Or maybe you're not expecting enough. Maybe you're not living up to an expectation because you've never set one or your bar is too low.
True. There are many aspects or ways for one to think that they have low self-esteem, right, or high self-esteem. There's so many factors, honestly. I wish to touch on everything that we can today, but there's so many factors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be, like you said, it could be just because you have wrong values or wrong expectations. I mean, obviously everybody's, to a degree subject to how they view or their view on their self-esteem is not exactly a true representative of who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we see sometimes, people with money. I mean, because we typically associate self-esteem with physical appearance a lot of times, right? Or other, factors that make someone successful or not in the society. So that's why we see that, like, a good-looking person with low self-esteem, right? We've seen that a lot of times. Even with people with money, a lot of money have low self-esteem, right? So it is not absolute values or a set of absolute values that determine self-esteem. Rather, it is entirely based on one's perspective of themselves, right?
And then once you've set the value, how far away you are from the ideal.
Yeah.
Typically, this is where self-esteem is created. You are set an idea, or most cases, everybody is subject to the idea bestowed upon them about what it is to be a good person in any regard, or to look good, to feel good, to sing well, do all these things, right? We have a standard, and we usually attribute that in a positive way with the word good, well, etc. However you want to name it.
Yeah.
And then we compare ourselves indirectly with these ideals, and usually the gap between where we are and where the ideal lies is then essentially where the self-esteem is developed. Either you see yourself as so far away, can never achieve it, and it seems hopeless, and then the derivative of that is a negative opinion of oneself, a bad self-esteem. Or, on the flip side, you could see how far away you are from the ideal, and it can be inspiring, motivating, and in return, you can have a positive self-esteem.
Yeah.
But again, I also think self-esteem, like we were talking about earlier, it's not this binary thing where you arrive to a positive self-esteem. I really think it's a representation of small things building towards an absolute goal or an ultimate goal.
Yes.
But self-esteem is granted on that journey.
Right.
You mentioned a quote earlier today from Aristotle. To summarize and maybe misparaphrase here a bit, is that we are what we repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not a virtue, but rather a habit.
Right. Something along the line. I mean, you could have just nailed it there, but something along that line.
Yeah.
Right.
So when we're talking about self-esteem specifically, that's like a perfect representation of excellence in regard to this. You could have changed the word excellence with a positive self-esteem.
Yeah.
Right? It's something that you strive for continually.
Yeah.
This is what builds your self-esteem.
Yes.
And sometimes, like we mentioned before, hey, maybe the goal is just too crazy. Maybe it's impossible to have a positive self-esteem because your ideal is unrealistic. Yeah. It's far-fetched. If I were to tell myself and request it of myself that I have to be the best singer in the world, otherwise I suck. I'm a failure.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy. All these negative things. I would never even start upon the path of improving my singing ability because the gap is just too wide. The chasm is too big. Yet I still desire it.
Yeah.
So I have an unrealistic expectation for myself. And my singing's not great. It's something though I love and strive for to improve upon. But I set the bar differently.
Yeah.
So I can order and improve by magnitudes rather than leaping, evil Knieveling, this crazy chasm.
Yeah.
I can make goals and my self-esteem can improve as I hit and achieve these goals.
Yeah.
So it actually enables me to even start by having the right ideal and value system from the get-go.
Right.
So before you can even look at your self-esteem, you have to be able to understand, well, what am I comparing myself to? Why do I think that's a good thing or a valuable thing? Why do I want to achieve that?
Right. Yeah. And also, like, I don't think outcome isn't. I think we've talked about this earlier. Outcome doesn't necessarily, represent your true value, right? As long as you strive for certain goal, certain purpose, I mean, right there automatically sets you apart from the rest of them, right?
Oh yeah,
because you're taking action, right? You're making continuous effort to be better,
yeah,
right? Or try to realize dreams and purposes and goals you have, right? That already makes you a better person. Therefore, you should think of yourself highly, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is a little bit related to the common saying of journey is more important than goals, outcomes. I mean, there are some truths to it, right? We know that because the journey itself is so valuable, through which you can gain a lot of things, even if you don't obtain the final goal, right? And then self-esteem is, in that context, very similar in that you may not ever reach your ideals, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing it wrong. I mean, you said earlier, unrealistic expectations, right? I mean, I think that is more for your mental health, right? In a way that, who wants to struggle every single day for 365 days for 10 years, right? That's something that can happen if you have really crazy, unrealistic goal.
We'd call that delusion, right? To a degree.
It could be, right? But I guess what I'm trying to say is that just because your goal is unrealistic or appears to be very hard to obtain doesn't mean that your goal is wrong,
No, yeah.
I mean, I think it is more important to have goals in stages, just because that's more efficient and sustainable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your goals are bad, just because it's not realistic.
Correct.
What I mean?
Striving for an ideal.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
The realization is that ideals are actually just tools. These concepts are just tools we can use, and if we don't use them properly, they don't become tools. They can become weapons that hurt us. And purely just by the frame of mind we have surrounding these things is whether they damage us or they add benefit to our life. If we can actually realize potential, realize desire, and truly what we want, then we can make the effort to go on the journey, to embark upon the road. And that's the great thing about setting a goal and the power of the journey, like you mentioned before, is because whatever goal you set, it's not guaranteed to you. Like, you will get you're very fortunate if you accomplish a goal in a lot of ways, depending how lofty or outlandish the goal is. Of course, that's going to vary if you can actually accomplish it. But just by the process of setting a goal, you actually create the journey. And that can't be taken from you. Nobody can steal that from you. Nobody can steal the journey from you. And that's the power in setting goals and values and ideals.
Yes. And that is because that's setting goals and, trying to achieve them is, manifestation of your freedom, right? And, that's why you're already in a better position than, anybody else who's not taking those actions, right? Because you can think of how many times or how many people do we see that they talk about goals, they talk about ideals, but never taking action, right?
Unfortunately, more than less, I think.
Right. So, the fact that you're already doing that, taking those steps, already make you, very liberated person, that you have that freedom to make choices for yourself. You know what I mean? So,
just by virtue of having something a desire, essentially. How few people even have that much. So in that regard, having a goal is important, but understanding why you even have the desire to create a goal. So if you have a goal, and even maybe you're not doing it right now, maybe you're very aware of what your goal is, and you understand, I'm lazy, I'm apathetic, I'm indifferent, I just can't surmount to overcome these obstacles to accomplish my goal. At that point in time, once you realize that, maybe it's time to reevaluate. Be really honest with yourself. Write down what you've done. This is similar to our goal setting episode back in the New Year's. Write these things down see where your shortcomings are, where your success is, and then restructure what you're doing to attain that goal or get on that journey.
Yeah.
And this is tied directly to self-esteem, because I think a lot of people would agree with me here that we're almost in a default setting to have poor self-esteem unless we're active and taking action to improve our life in a meaningful way for us personally. My meaningfulness is different, vastly different than potentially anybody who's listening to this.
Yeah.
We share meaning in a lot of ways, which is why we've embarked upon this journey together.
Yeah.
But not a lot of people are fortunate in that regard. However, there's tons of things that are shared between people.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be a better climber. There's tens of thousands of people that are trying actively right now to become better climbers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this is why it's also important to have a community. It can help develop your self-esteem because people can keep you honest, not only with yourself, but help guide you and steer you in the correct direction. So you don't necessarily have to waste your time.
Right.
But again, you have to take those opinions and those ideas critically and be constructive.
Yeah. And then, you know, I like to return to the first step of, you know, how we actually tackle this. I think that's a really good general approach. But also where you can start is that if you really have a thought of, oh, I have really low self-esteem, I want to improve it, then I think a good starting point could be, you know, why you think that way, right? Why do you think you have low self-esteem, right? Some people attribute it to, oh, I'm so ugly, I'm fat, or, you know, whatever the reason, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think everybody probably can come up with, you know, a few things that why they think that they have low self-esteem. And start from there, right? And then that could be a very specific way to tackle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's something that you think that you've struggled with self-esteem wise? Because
man.
maybe this will make it a little more relatable.
Yes. So before I go into that, I like to say that the, you know, most effective way or the only way to improve your self-esteem is to repeatedly overcome obstacles. I think that's the best way to really improve self-esteem, because by doing so, you learn a lot of positive characteristics of yourself.
Simply by virtue of overcoming.
Yes, because you need to bring out all those things in you to overcome obstacles, hardships, right? I'm talking about, you know, it doesn't have to be like the major hardships that, you know, you would see in a movie or a story, right?
Yeah.
But a set of all those hardships, right? In varying degrees of difficulties.
Yeah.
But only doing so is only possible if you bring in certain positive characteristics, right? Otherwise, it's not possible, right? So,
what positive characteristics would you be referring to in this?
So, for example, you think you're out of shape. That makes you feel you have low self-esteem, right? It's affecting your low self-esteem. What do you have to do? Well, you need to be persistent with your workout schedule. You need to be very, maintain your positive thinking about, because it's a long journey, right? A lot of people just, you know, weighing themselves every single day. That's a hard journey. Like, it's hard to, you know, digest that you don't see your improvement.
That daily reminder that you're failing.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Only purely because you're measuring at the wrong time. You're looking too much, too often.
Right, and then you cannot be lazy, right? You got to be industrious. Those positive characteristics have to play a role to, you know, collectively make you stronger enough to, you know, overcome that obstacle or goal, reaching the goal, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it. And for me, I was when I was young, I'm still, you know, relatively short, and there was I didn't like it. I didn't like the fact that I'm shorter than other guys, and, you know, all that. But when I became 14, I didn't like the fact that I'm smaller, you know, kind of weaker than others. So I tried to work out. I started workout. I tried to you know, learn how to do some martial arts, and I fought a lot because of the reason. I wanted to prove that I'm stronger than others.
Yeah.
And then, because I was
gangster over here.
And I'm not suggesting anybody go out and fight anybody.
Go kick some people's asses. That'll make you realize you're tough.
I just did it because I was younger and stupid. Immature. But also, because I was smaller, guys would
underestimate you.
Yeah, pick up a fight with me, right? And then every time I win, and then I went to all boys school, so that helped a lot, personally.
Yeah,
because I had to fight a lot.
Yeah,
my friend was big, but I was a better fighter. But he never had to fight because he was big. Like, he was tall and wide and big, burly guy.
Yeah,
but he didn't have to prove anything, even though he had a lot more to prove. In reality. But anyway, that helped me a lot in the military and actual fights in the ring. Yeah, so.
That's definitely a difficult thing to overcome. I mean, I definitely know a lot of guys that suffer is not the right word, but they feel they suffer because of their height.
Yeah.
Or because of their size or stature or anything in that regard. Something that we're totally have no control of.
Yeah.
And we have no control over that. And I think that would be beneficial for a lot of people to hear because it does seem like maybe this is human nature, but we have such a strong desire to change literally the unchangeable. Like, it can't be changed, and that bothers us so bad that for whatever reason, rather than realizing like these are just variables that I guess it wouldn't be a variable in that regard. These are like static things. We fight against that notion so hard, and it manifests in self-esteem, poor self-esteem sometimes.
And also, a really important thing is that no one should define themselves in terms of things that they lack. Everybody lacks something. That's unfair. That's just not, logical at all. Everybody should define themselves, in terms of positive characteristics of themselves,
I think that's a very good point because, I mean, by definition, we're going to lack infinitely more than we have.
Yes.
What we have is a known.
Yeah.
And I would argue you could explore that infinitely in so many different ways conceptually.
Yeah.
But, to look at what we don't have forces you to look at everything. And that's just a dizzying equation. I think that's just exhausting by sheer numbers. Of course, you're never going to be able to be satisfied once you realize it's an unsolvable equation, that you bang your head against the wall with it repeatedly. It can never be solved.
Yeah.
And there's some frustration that comes from that. But we're so trapped in that cycle of belief that I can solve it.
Yeah.
Or, I can fix this. Maybe in the case of being short, it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll get some platform shoes.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get all these things to cover this issue that ultimately will not solve it. Because if you don't come to terms with it yourself through your own experience, you'll never have your self-esteem be improved. And that's a hard thing. Even what we're talking about and communicating with you out there, you can hear all this, you can understand intellectually, but if you don't believe it for yourself, it can never be true. And it's a very hard thing because none of us can tell you or solve your problem for you.
Right.
And it's not easy. There's no one-step method. There's no, wow, the light bulb came on and suddenly it's fixed. A lot of the times when self-esteem issues are resolved, it can feel that way. It can feel almost instantaneous. But really, it's a product of so many variables of being on a specific path to eventually get to the point where your self-esteem issues are resolved. And I don't mean permanently resolved. I mean resolved in a way where you can go through life without being stressed out and thinking about yourself in a negative light all day long.
Yeah.
And there's some people that can't, right? There's some people that have chemical imbalances. They were born a poor card in their life.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for them to improve. But I do think there's a real power to ideology in the things we're discussing that can actually help change that. And I'm not suggesting this is more powerful than medicine. Absolutely not. I think some things are a conjunction of manifesting in a physical reality and then an intellectual reality, right? So it's the experience and the intelligence understanding of it. And when these two things come together with action and staying on the path, slowly but surely, I think you can erode away these self-esteem issues.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's not easy, guys. Like we've, you mentioned yours. I had self-esteem issues with regards to how I looked.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm not like the best looking guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I have any skills really. I'm not really natural in anything. Yeah. But for me, it didn't affect me in the way very negatively. Mm-hmm. It was, I see the gap. I want to change that.
Yeah.
I want to be somebody that's better than I am currently.
Yeah.
My biggest one when I was a child, dude, I had horrible allergies, sick all the time, could barely be outside.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate it how this thing held power over me.
Yeah.
And this didn't manifest in like a negative self-esteem way, but it totally could have. I could have totally been like, I'm just a weak dude. I'm sickly. I'm frail. It's just who I am. I'm not an outdoors person. But I said, no, F that. This doesn't control me. I'm going to do everything to expose myself to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Right.
And now I spend so much free time outside. Like my entire life is
that's great.
Completely opposite of what it was as a child and went through in my childhood formative years.
Right.
But that only came from being able to see the gap of where I was and where I want to be and making realistic steps to get there.
Yeah.
And of course, there's some things like residual within the self-esteem that still pervade, right? You know, still feel inconfident in some regard to your looks. Of course, everybody has those bad days where they wake up and they're just like, I don't like the way I look. Like, I'm not a good-looking dude. Nobody would be attracted to me, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why it's super important, though, especially in those moments when you have a friend you can trust, you know, people that love you and actually care about your well-being and your worth. And rather than them using that to trick you into, like, keeping your self-esteem low, they can say, no, man, you look good, dude. Don't worry about it. Or they can be honest with you, like, yeah man, your appearance is sloppy. Like, shave, clean up, man. Do something. Yeah. You know, to make yourself look better. You'll feel better. Yeah. But I think that's one negative in the current the current culture we live in is most of these people that see you have self-esteem issues, they're trying to sell you something, and they want you to remain upset and have negative feelings about yourself. They're so ready to remain on that pedestal that they have it all figured out, and they're gonna say, look, man, you just do this workout program, buy these supplements, buy these clothes, dude, those problems will go away. People are gonna love you. You're gonna be valuable.
It's so disgusting in that like all those, we've been talking about many different topics so far, and then it is so unfortunate to realize that almost everything is tied into consumerism, right? I mean, we're just talking, we didn't even actually plan to talk about it.
I know, how do we get on this?
But self-esteem issue, right? There are a lot of people, I don't know, it's hard to put a number to it, but a lot of people, you know, have low self-esteem, right? And then there are some people out there who are trying to take advantage of it rather than, you know, suggesting them some solutions, right?
Yeah.
And they kind of disgust me,
you
know? But it's out there. And, you know, you should be aware of it too, right? You should be aware that there are people who are willing to and desire to take advantage of your weak points, you know?
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's a sad reality, which is why it's also so important to not get your worldview from what's depicted in the media. Yeah. It's a misrepresentation. It is a specific representation, but it's just one. It's one view of the world that's not actually true of everybody else.
And then, you know, that's why also, sorry to cut you, but it's important to understand that, like, buying things won't change your self-esteem at all, right? No. It's not going to solve the problem.
Momentarily Band-Aid. You'll feel good for a second.
Exactly.
But as long as the root of the problem remains, doesn't matter what you're wearing, doesn't matter how jacked you are, doesn't matter how fly you look or what other people think about you. If you can't feel this truth within yourself internally, you're always going to have issues. Yeah. And again, I don't think you can be completely free of these issues. I think we're bound by physiology in this regard. But it can be improved upon. And rather than feeling the pain of self-esteem, the realization and the gap in a negative way, you can feel in a positive way of like, oh, snap, I can improve this if I want to. Or you can be like, oh, that's stupid. I can't believe I even hold that ideal. Yeah. shift your ideal.
Yeah.
That can help your self-esteem issue.
Yeah.
And it can be incredibly hard because our ideals and our standards, again, come from the culture and time period we live in.
True. Yeah. So, and then also when we say that, can I actually get that coffee, please?
Absolutely. More coffee?
Yeah, we're drinking coffee.
Oh, let's pour. Oh, it's going to be... Oh, get closer to the mic. I want them to hear this.
Oh, really?
Guys, listen to this coffee pouring. Oh, I bet that's nice.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Doing wonders on your self-esteem right now.
ASMR.
Yeah. So why do you think in this day and age, in the U.S. at least, because that's all I can speak for, that we seem to be having an epidemic of low self-esteem issues? It seems hard not to tie it to consumerism, but that's been discussed millions of times probably.
Yeah, I think really, I really hate to say this, but I have to. But
oh no, here we go.
Really, the fundamental issue is the problem we've been discussing on almost all episodes.
Which I know what you're about to say.
Which is a set of, or let me just say, rephrase it, lack of identity. Lack of identity due to dominant set of imposed ideas. I think that's why. Yeah. That's why consumerism is so prevalent in the society, because a lot of people suffer from the lack of identity. When I say lack of identity, I mean lack of self-values.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the values that are only possible to be realized by the journey that they create.
Values we know to be self-evident based on our experiences. That's what you're referring to, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's the fundamental problem here. Yeah.
So essentially, with that belief, then, I mean, everybody is subject to this.
Oh, yeah.
No matter where you're born.
Yeah.
No matter what time
literally
period.
every human being is subject to it.
Yeah.
Like, we've talked about this in a little more detail, but like nobody has had a luxury to create their own values as they grew up, right? When you grow up, you're under the influence of your parents or your legal guardians, whoever they are, and then the language that you start to learn that enables you to express your ideas was just taught to you. It's not that you created it, right?
Yeah.
All those words. That's why. Okay, we talked about travel, like language, a little bit in the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
The Charlemagne said that having a second language is to have another soul, right?
Yeah.
That is too. I mean, okay, anybody who is bilingual can understand what that means, really, because there are, especially when you have two different language systems that have different roots and other origins.
Mm-hmm.
You really, like, for one subject, sometimes you can come up with two different ideas because they don't share anything in common, and you cannot sometimes translate one word to the other language at all because it doesn't exist, right? So your ideas just automatically become subject to the limitation of the language.
Right.
In that sense, coming back to our idea discussion that whether or not the language we learned to a degree dictates us is logically true.
Yeah.
Right? So, again, self-esteem is just one small aspect of what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
But the entire journey, your life, should be... what am I saying? I'm not trying to be preachy here, but in that discussion, in this context I'm talking about, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but in that context, a human being is basically, struggle throughout their life to, get rid of all those imposed values and at least to challenge them to really realize their own values, if possible. And that's another question, by the way, whether or not that's possible, right? But that ties into self-esteem is just tied into that problem and just one small aspect of it.
It's amazing. I mean, you're completely correct because with the language we have and the way we frame things, say I feel something, we have an experience, we go out, say I approach a girl or I just smile at a girl.
Right.
She doesn't smile back, makes eye contact with me,
right.
chooses absolutely
so
not to smile.
It, right? That happens all the time.
No problem. Yeah. So, I mean, most people smile back if you smile at them genuinely.
Yeah.
But if they don't smile back, your experience of that is going to be bound by the language, and it's going to try and explain. And we do this without even realizing, this is subconsciously happening. It's not a conscious feeling. And then we tie that action and that experience to a feeling. And we can only define that feeling around the language in that culture and time period. So I can take that as rejection, right? You could totally take it as rejection. Most people would. Or alternatively, if you have a more robust vocabulary and experience of the world, you could be thinking, I wonder what's on her mind. I wonder if she's going through something. It could be a million different things. But I don't have to tie that no longer to purely just rejection. I can tie it to multiple things that may serve me better.
Yeah.
Even again, this is maybe not the best example, but maybe I could be like, okay, maybe she's having a bad day. Maybe I just go over and say, oh, hey, hi,
Yeah.
Be polite. And then go, and maybe she'll open up. Oh, hey, and then you can make your comment of like, oh, I just, I thought you looked down or something. Again, may not be the case.
Right.
You have to use your judgment as best as you can. But you're now afforded an infinite amount of possibilities.
Yeah.
Probably not infinite, but a lot more possibilities than previously.
Yeah.
Which would have just been, I'm unattractive.
Right.
Girls don't like me. Or whatever. The framework of your mind is so dictated by the language in our experiences, which again, why it's so valuable to get experience, because then you can pull from so many different things. You're not bound purely by your perception that was forced upon you or that the media has given you. You can create and then pick and choose. And of course, in regard to somebody else, there's going to be a truth based on what their experience is, right? If you exchange words, we can arrive at a common place and an understanding. Yeah. And that's what we would define in that situation of a conversation as the truth of the matter.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point, that we're bound by the language. But through experience, we correct those meanings of language and make it, rather than the language use us,
we can use the language.
We can use the language. And then that is only possible, I think, through experiences. Yeah. Because that is undeniable.
Yeah.
The values you get from experiences are undeniable.
Yeah. You know what the coolest thing to me about that is? Yeah. In that regard, let's say the same situation. Say I walk over to the girl. How's your day going? I can be very polite, very nice. And she might realize in that moment, wow, my reality about dudes or, whatever the situation is can be altered and changed. Yeah. Because now she's experiencing something she may have not experienced before. Somebody's coming up and being friendly, though I was, whatever the reason is. Maybe she was cold, preoccupied, just didn't realize the signal she was getting off. And I can essentially establish a new reality about the way people can be purely by just being different. Yeah. By stepping outside the cultural norm. And I've had this happen a lot of times. So we've talked about this. We go on a lot of dates, have a great time, and a lot of times I will have people tell me that they think I'm a really great guy. All these like huge, amazing things. To me, though, I'm just doing like the bare minimum. Yeah. In the regard to, I'm being what I think any decent human being should be, and because people on average don't behave that way, they're surprised, they're shocked. Yeah. They didn't think like good people like you could exist, really. Yeah. So you can help change and set the standard of, dude, everybody should be treating you this way. Like, people shouldn't be rude to you. People shouldn't be mean to you. And if they are, again, for the most part, you don't have to entertain them in your life. But you empower them by being different than the status quo. You know, like what we're doing right now, maybe somebody's watching this and is thinking, wow, those guys are doing it. They're not even making money.
Yeah.
But they're doing it. I can do that? Wait, what? I can do that?
Yeah.
And in that way, your expression of will and your will to power enables others to realize they can be free and have a different truth.
Yeah.
And that, to me, alone is worth going and embarking upon this path.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think we talked about this earlier, but maybe trying to just put this in a different way that, you know, like you just said, will, right? That manifestation of your own will is one of the strongest things that, you know, human can do, right? And then you repeatedly do that, like you will automatically improve your self-esteem.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like self-esteem is just, we've sliced the concept, feelings and the way we perceive certain aspects of reality, and we've just defined it as self-esteem.
Yeah.
But it is amazing how when you're on a path, everything seems to kind of fall into place.
Yeah.
All these other facets of reality seem to line up.
Yeah.
You know, you have less struggles overall just because you know the direction you're heading.
Yeah.
You're not bombarded by these other ideas or things that other people will deal with. And again, not to say those things don't exist.
Yeah.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
Of course they do. But they're just a slice of somebody's reality and perception.
Yeah. I think in the end, your journey in life is to become a complete person, right? I mean, isn't that the journey that we're on? We're trying to be a more complete person and, you know, manifest our will throughout the life. And then maybe even leave the trace of your will behind you, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do. And maybe you're right. I mean, we shouldn't really, you know, limit these terms, all the, you know, discussion and meanings to this two words, self-esteem, right? Just try to be a better person and complete person every day, you know, just try to be a badass.
Yeah.
Go out there. Oh, you know what? I want to learn this. I want to, it takes probably a year or so, but I'm going to learn this. I want to be good at this, you know? I'm going to take care of my body and health. I'm going to take care of my intellectual, you know, curiosity. You know, I want to expand my ideas, you know, just do those things. You just become a badass.
Yeah.
You know, just don't forget about the word self-esteem. Just become a better person, you know, try to, you know, manifest your will.
Yeah. A lot of times poor self-esteem is purely just because we're fixated on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
We're looking at a lack, like you mentioned, we're looking at the lack thereof rather than what we have. Guess what? I mean, if you can even realize you have a lack thereof, you are infinitely capable.
Yeah.
Purely, you have the power of perception. You just need to affix your gaze on something more valuable, more beautiful in that regard. Oh, wow, I realize I lack.
Yeah.
I don't have things. Okay, well, what do I have? I have the ability to think for myself. I have the ability to be critical. Shoot, I have the ability to go read about people that have done this.
Yeah.
Listen to people that have self-esteem issues. Understand that, yeah, people that have suffered the way I have gotten through it.
Yeah.
I'm not alone. Because I think a lot of this self-esteem issues stem from a place of a belief that you're actually alone. Like you're the only one who's been on this path and this journey.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're the only person with the experiences you have that's been on that path. But there's aspects of that path that people through time have been on, have spent their life to communicate and try to help other people. And you have availability and access to that.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, if you say you don't have the internet, say you don't have books, you can still wrestle with the concepts in your head. You know, you can play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Because you're aware of how binary things can be. You know, you can understand the opposite of something. So start doing maybe the opposite of what you've been doing, the way you view yourself, the way you think of things. Maybe that's one step along the road to achieving more self-esteem.
Yeah.
But I do think eventually, if you're just on the path and you have goals and you find the will, your self-esteem will naturally improve with it as you traverse that path.
Yeah. And also, I'd like to point out that when we say that, you know, don't focus on or don't define yourself in terms of things that you lack, we're not saying that just focus on positive aspects that you have. That's like, we talked about this before. That's like an isolated water, right?
Yeah.
It's going to decay. We're not saying that just settle with those positive characteristics, right? Then you can be delusional, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's a danger. We're not saying that. Praise your positive characteristics about yourself, but, improve, daily, improve monthly, improve yearly, right? Become a better person. We're not saying that just settle with those positive things and just call it okay, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
No human being should be satisfied with that.
Absolutely not. You're missing out on so much life if you are, because the absence of change is essentially death.
Yes.
So again, and when we say be a better person, we're not ascribing any values to that. We're not saying you need to go feed the homeless. Like, being better is completely in regard to your value system, your judgment system, your ideology. I would say there's some, relatively speaking, absolute values. Health, for example. That one most people have. I think most people struggle with self-esteem in regards to health because they have a physique attached to the image of health. But the reason health is important is because it allows us to persist, right? So we continue upon the journey longer.
Yeah.
So that's why it should be valuable. And that's relatively objective for the time period we live in. Like, health is a valuable thing to have. And there's probably other things like that. But again, don't take our word for it. Seek it out yourself. Be real with yourself. You only have so much energy in the day. And no matter what, as a person, you have to realize you can never live up to all these ideals. You should never have an unlimited amount of ideals.
Yeah.
Because you'll never, ever be able to achieve them. So set one ideal first, work towards that, and then you'll realize, I have more time in my day.
Yeah.
If one of my ideals is be better health, I only have to work out for an hour or something, and then diet. Okay, that's only a couple hours of my day.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That ideal is taken care of.
Right.
Build that habit. What's my next ideal? Do I want to learn the guitar? Do I want to be somebody who's artistic, creative?
Yeah.
How do I express that? Search it out. Then you'll figure out, I only need to spend maybe an hour or two. Or eventually you might arrive on 3 or 4 things that define you, and you want to become as good as possible for you to meet your potential. Then you just keep ironing those out, knocking those out, not worrying about the things that don't line up with your values. And then you start realizing that most people's problems that they have are self-created. They've just accepted that they should have an opinion and an ideology in regard to everything. Yeah. And dude, nobody can do that. Yeah. I hate to say it, but you can't have an opinion on everything that's valid. Yeah. It's just too complex. Life is too multifaceted. Right. You will wear yourself thin and short. Yeah. So focus on what you can change, and more importantly, focus on what you want to change. Yeah. There will be other people for the things that don't move you, that you're not passionate about. Right. There will be people there at rallies. There will be people there feeding the homeless. Be somebody that leans into your passion and your desire, and your self-esteem will join you in the journey.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in relation to that, we're going to talk about, we're doing this actually for the first time, revealing what we're going to talk about next episode.
I have no idea. I do know.
Yeah, so we will talk about death. I know it could be a very heavy subject, but that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
We've one of our Patreon members would like to hear more about Memento Mori.
Yeah, too.
And that's in regards to death.
Yeah, if you have any ideas that you want to specifically, want us to discuss about death, the concept about death, or our experiences, there could be anything, but please let us know if you are interested in any specific thing.
And we've both experienced close deaths, even recently. So
yes,
we're very familiar with
good point. Yeah, we can talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, we're not coming from just a intellectual grounds. We're talking from a practical, experiential.
Yeah, near-death experiences, right?
Yeah, of a little bit of everything. Yeah, literally just a near-death experience the other night, maybe. But yeah, again, if you want to hear more about even concepts we've already touched on, we're more than happy to do part 1, part 2, part 3.
Yeah,
etc. amount of the episodes. Currently, we're building out the plan for the next 3 months. We have ideas and some episodes already in the works. But again, we're doing this not only because we're interested in it, but we want to explore the ideas you're curious about.
Absolutely.
Because we want to learn too. Like,
yeah, I mean, along this journey, we learn a lot, right? I mean, we've been learning a lot, right? Yeah. So, anyway, I think that's it for today's episode.
I think so. Yeah, good. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Bye.
That's this week's episode of the Theory of Living podcast. Thanks for listening with us. We are Lafayette and Kai. Don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
And if you'd like to help support us, we have a Patreon page where you can subscribe for exclusive content.
Also, please share it with others who you think may find value in our discussion.
Leave a rating, a review, and please subscribe to the podcast.
Thank you again.
See you next time.